Salve omnes. Today we are going to talk about principal parts. Principal parts are the building blocks of verbs, and you use them to form different tenses. Most Latin verbs have 4 principal parts. I don't know if you've noticed, but starting in stage 13, the verbs in the vocab section were listed a little bit differently. In fact, they were giving you 3 of the 4 principal parts. So here is an example. Here's our verb porto, portare, portavi, portatus. Now let's talk about what each one of these principal parts means. So our first one is always the I form of a verb. So for example, porto, I carry. Hopefully you remember that O is the I ending in the present tense, and among others. The second principal part is what we call the infinitive, remember, and the second principal part would be the to carry form. The third principal part, notice how it has a V and it ends in a long I. That one would be translated as I carried ed. Hopefully you recognize that as perfect tense, first person, singular, or the I form. And finally, this fourth principal part would be translated carried. This fourth principal part is technically called a participle. More on that soon. The second principal part, as you know, is called the infinitive. And also, you should remember that the infinitive is translated to plus whatever the verb means. So, an example, portare, to carry. Now, the second principal part gives us some valuable information about a verb. The second principal part tells us what conjugation or group a verb belongs to. What is a conjugation? It's simply a group of verbs. So that second principal part will tell us which conjugation the verb belongs to. Let's talk a little bit about the conjugations. Now, if that second principal part ends in ARE, we say that it belongs to the first conjugation. An example would be habitare. If the second principal part ends in a long ERE, we would say that this verb belongs to the second conjugation. For example, sedere. If the second principal part ends in an ERE without the long mark, we would call this third conjugation. An example, curare. Now I want you to pay close attention for the difference between the second conjugation and the third. Notice the second conjugation has a long mark over the E, and the third conjugation does not have a long mark over the E. And finally, the fourth conjugation. If the second principal part ends in an IRE, notice the I does have a long mark, we would say that this verb is fourth conjugation. An example would be audire. Thank you for your attention. Have a great day.